Hello, greetings once again. How have you been? It's been a while. Happy weekend to you. How was your week? I hope your week was not too stressful. Anyways, so let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about free will, understanding what type of free will exists, and coercion, a mixture of both. You get. So, firstly, I'm sure one thing that there's somebody watching somewhere out there. You made a choice today. You chose what to eat, you chose what to wear, you chose what to drink, you chose to work that job today, you chose to do almost everything you did today. And you felt all of those choices came from you. Well, I want to let you know that you're wrong. Most of those choices you made today didn't come from you. You were actually coerced into doing majority of the things you did today. So earlier we've been taught that free will is simple. Everything you do, you are responsible for your success, you are responsible for your failures, you are the one responsible for everything that happens to you. That is the way we've been taught that every man has free will, everybody has free will, you're free to do anything you want to do, and the benefits or the repercussions of whatever you do is solely on you, and that is naturally how it is. You know, most things you do, you are being coerced to do it. And knowing this is actually a good thing. To be aware that you are being coerced to do things is actually a good thing because it gives you power. You know, what you're not aware of that is controlling you has more power over you than when you're aware of something that is controlling. Even if you don't really have the power to like end all form of coercion, if you're aware that this and this and this are the factors acting, are the external factors or internal factors acting on me or against me or for me, you'll be able to know how to more or less like control it to your benefits or try and understand where you are and how to move forward from there. You get. So I'll give you an example, something that I feel would be easy for you to understand. So let's pick, tomorrow is Saturday now. Okay, you want to get something light, just a treat. You go to a restaurant, a fancy restaurant, you feel free, the waiter comes, hands you the menu, you're looking at the menu, considering options, you know, eventually you make a choice, you know, you experience yourself deciding. But if I had to trace everything that happened now, you are not the one that just chose that, like, that is not, that might not have been what you would have chosen if things, some variables changed. For example, now let me show you the first one. You didn't even choose what shows on the menu. Do you know? You didn't have the free will to choose what will be shown on the menu. You only saw what the restaurant wanted to show you. The restaurant might have 50 meals, you get, and might just show you 30 meals, or they might have like 30 meals and show you like maybe just 10 meals that are available. And to you, you're not aware that the management have coerced you into choosing from those 10 out of the 30 that actually exist. So that way now you're being coerced actually. The number two aspect of this decision you made now is that your finances are already coercing you because you have a budget of what you want to spend while going out. And if your budget was, let's say, 50K, and there's a meal that is 70K or 80K, you won't even consider like tasting the food or asking more about it because you know it's out of your league. Same thing with if you go to a club and there's some alcohol that are in millions of naira or dollars, thousands of dollars, and there are some that are quite affordable. so far as it is above your financial capacity, you tend to not show interest in it. And it's not like you don't like it or you won't like it if you taste it, but because it's out of your reach, your financial situation has kind of coerced you now to not even think about it or not even ask much about it, you know. Then your taste preference, things you like normally. When we're growing up, if you're from the Igbo, you must have been eating meals like on a weekend, tomorrow being a weekend now, you most likely eat akara in the morning and bread, or in the evening, soup and swallow. Afternoon will be Sunday rice, you know. So one of those things you've been doing regularly since you were little, those will start creating your preferences because your preferences are chosen from what you were exposed to. You know, it's what you were exposed to that determines what you can choose as your preference. You might not have eaten some Yoruba meals like Amala and Ewedu as an Igbo guy, but to you, you feel it might not be that good. It will not be nice because it doesn't look like what you eat as Igbos, you know. But if you were opportunity to have tested Amala and Ewedu while growing up, not with once, two, three, four times, you see yourself that when you're maybe like in your 18s or 20s, you will not see Amala and Ewedu as something that you don't really like. You like it because when you grew up eating it, you get. So when you're tasting a meal and the meal is tasting so nice in your, like if it feels so sweet and all, you're actually like tasting your history. You're tasting the history of things you've been eating. Like you're reliving the experience of what you've experienced before that you ended up liking. You're now re-experiencing it again. So it's more like you're tasting your history, you know, and the culture you come from kind of shapes what you feel as normal. If you're an Igbo person now, eating meals like corn and pear would seem normal to you. I think some other cultures don't eat that. Let me go for something more specific. Let's say something like ofe onugbu, bitter leaf soup. Yeah, if you're an Igbo person now, you must have eaten bitter leaf soup before, but a Hausa person, also what concerns a Hausa man and bitter leaf soup, you get. So the culture where you come from also has a role in forming what you like, forming what you are interested in, you know, kind of like shapes you, it coerces you, you know. Because if you have free will, you're meant to be able to eat all the meals in the world, then make a decision from all of that and you now freely choose the one you want. But no, you can't have that easily, you know. So you're being coerced in many aspects of life. Then the waiter that brings the menu to you, he might stand there for at most 3 to 5 minutes. 5 minutes is even too much, you know. So there's kind of a need for you to make a decision quickly. So you might not even have time to like analyze everything, go online, search for the ingredients. Is there anything you're allergic to in this or that, or check if you might even like it before tasting it, you know. But you won't have that time. So you're also being coerced also to make a choice faster. You get that kind of thing. So if I'm to explain it in another way, you know, these are the things that happened when you walked into the restaurant and you made a choice. You know, the choice you made was shaped by what was offered to you. You get what you could afford. There's another thing that shaped the choice you made. Because what you couldn't afford, you won't even consider choosing it. What you were taught to want, things you've been eating or things you've done repeatedly while growing up, you become like convenient doing it again or choosing it again. You know, what you knew existed. What did they show you? Did they show you all the options, or they just showed you the options they wanted you to see? And you now had to make a choice from the options that were available that they wanted you to see. And those options might not be all the options that exist, but it's just the options that they wanted you to see. You know, that way now you think, oh, I'm making a choice from everything that exists, but you're actually making a choice from what they want you to see. They're coercing you to choosing from a given set of things. You get. So that is not free will. And many of you have felt like, oh, I I just made a choice. You didn't make a choice like through free. You were coerced to make a choice. You get. So coercion is kind of inevitable, but you need to be aware of it so you can know how to make it work for you, not work against you. If you're not aware, you won't know how to make it work for you, and you see yourself being coerced to do so many things, and you start blaming yourself for decisions you made. Meanwhile, you were coerced to make that decisions. So I kind of want to speak to people watching this. There may be some aspect of your life that is not going according to plan, and you might be saying, I'm lazy. I feel I'm lazy. My mates are doing this. No, you're exhausted. You know, you might think you're undisciplined. I can't keep up with going to the gym. I went to the gym twice this weekend. So the remaining 5 times I didn't go. You're not. You're just responding to constraints that you did not create. There's some constraints that are holding you back from doing that thing that you want to do. But you've not sat down to ask yourself, what are the constraints affecting me? You need to sit down and ask yourself that question. You know, sometimes you might think that you made some bad choices, you decide to do some things that were not best for you. But the problem is, you might have made a choice now that was available to you, given what you could afford. You might have chosen to buy a phone that um is not as powerful as some other phone, some other devices, but based on what you could afford, you have to just settle for what your money could like afford, and it might not give you what you want in the long run. So most of the times your failures is not always about you. Most of the time, sometimes it's the system. The system can work in a way that you won't be able to get some things you want to get. The system can work against you, and the system is working against everyone actually. But many people are not aware of how the system does that. So it's when you have the information of this is happening, you can know, oh, since this is happening, what can I do? Or how can I realign myself to ensure even if this is happening, this will still favor me? Do you get? That is the awareness, that is the freedom. That is the kind of freedom you can actually experience. Something like free will. Free will does not exist. Free will is when you are aware that something's acting against you and you find a way to soft tune it to still favor you, or you still work in alliance with it to achieve a greater good for yourself. Yet some people you may have wanted to become something in the future, but there'll be some constraints that must have held you back, and you won't really know that it's not just your fault. It's not your fault. Like if you look within, if you look out, if you look from a third party point of view, like as a third party looking at yourself and the constraints surrounding you, you see that there were XYZ factors in play that made you make that decision you made. But you just think that, oh, I did it all by myself. No, you didn't do anything by yourself. You were coerced from the day you were born. Everything you choose, you were coerced to choose everything you choose. Your religion, the language you speak, the culture, the things you like, you were coerced from the very moment you started breathing. You were coerced to start valuing some things more than some other things. You know, even almost everything about your life actually is not like you just decided to do some things. Everything led to something that made you to make that decision. Sometimes you might want to escape your family's expenses. Maybe the load is much on you. You try to reduce the way you come through for family so they can start building your finances. Then there will be a pushback, then because we are humans, and being humans, isolation is kind of like a torture to humans. Humans don't like being isolated. So in order to avoid being isolated, you now give in to what they want you to do. You end up doing what pleases everybody. It might not please you, but so far as it pleases everybody, you feel is a smaller price to pay, you get, than being isolated. So you were coerced. You were coerced to make that decision. It's not like that's what you will have made if you had free will. That way that free will is kind of non-existent, you know. But when you understand that your constraints are real, you know that the things limiting you are real things that you can actually point to and you can observe, you know, and it's not like you are a failure, no, but the outcome you got was gotten based on XYZ constraints, and those constraints are real things that actually influence your choices. You know, you can then start working strategically to change it. You know, so it's when you're aware of it that you can work strategically to change what kind of outcomes you're getting. You know, so you don't need to be blaming yourself for circumstances that you didn't design. You need to start asking yourself, how do I expand my options given what I actually have? You need to know where you are, know what you have, then ask yourself, how can I have more options? Because free will is having more options. The more options you have, the closer you are to having free will. But nobody can have 100% free will. Even the president of America is being coerced to alliances. You know, Israel is there, UK is there. There are people that still coerce the decisions that the US government make. Nobody just makes any decision to 100% free will. Free will is a myth, you know. But you being aware that you're being coerced makes you closer to free will than someone that is blaming themselves for everything that happens to them. Even when it is obvious that this is not within your control. So why are you blaming yourself for this? Why are you blaming yourself for that? Those things are out of your control, you get. So I believe this whole coercion thing, there are 4 cages. I use the word cages because a cage is like something that limits you, you know, and most cages in life are actually mental cages, are actually like virtual cages. You can't see it, but you can feel the impact of this kind of things. Yet, number one, the topmost cage that people need to understand that constraints and shapes everything they do is money. Money is number one. You know, everybody has the basic needs. They need to eat. They need to find a place like they can stay. You know, they need to do this and that. Money is not optional. You need money to survive, actually. You know, and for you to make money, that now means you must end up partaking in labor activities. Like you must sell your time to survive. You must work. Let me put it that way. You must work. You know, now that is coercion. So are you saying you're already being coerced at the initial stage for you to eat, for you to have a place that you can rest your head, you must work. You're being coerced to work. So you can't call that free will. Free will is when you can choose to do something or do something and this thing. But even that decision that you get to make safe is still being influenced by other things that surrounds it. You get. So you may say, okay, yes, everybody has to work, everybody has to partake in one way or the other, but that's not really the point because even if everybody has to work, you are not actually choosing to work. You are choosing how to survive. Yet, and that's a different thing entirely from everybody has to work, everybody has to work. If you are choosing between 2 jobs now, one is maybe 50K monthly, and the other one can be giving maybe 100K or 150K a month in 6 months. You know, now you're not even choosing freely again. You're not choosing between survive now and risk surviving. You know, that is also coercion again too. Yeah. And the economic system kind of relies on this coercion to balance things out. The system coerces us the most. Systemic coercion is more. Systemic coercion is